Oh yeah. Oh yeah, y'all. Yeah, 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 yeah. Whoa. Here we go, y'all. Now we're working, man. All right, we got you on audio, man. Let's see that video. We'll be ready to go, brother. Share that. Oh, yeah. 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 It's party time. Whoa, 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 whoa. What's up?
How's it going, Governor?
What's going on, brother? What's going on, man? This is JTronius. You are now Gabbin with the Governor once again, ladies and gentlemen. Without further ado, I'm going to let my guest introduce himself. Who are you, where are you, and what are you about, brother?
Yo, bro, good to hear from you, JTronius. I'm Maverick Quest, hailing from South London, Southeast to be exact. And I'm a music producer and engineer, and just love playing a lot of instruments, man, making a lot of noise.
Nice, nice. Now, you know, first of all, you are episode number 17. We know you like the number 17. It's very close to you. So this is, you know, we're all about alignment. So we had to do that with you, specifically with you. And you are our first international interview. Man, welcome to the show, bro. Apparently our bridge is, we got a pretty interesting story why we know each other. Very interesting story. And apparently the bridge between us is music. So let's start there, man. Let's start with your journey. Let's start from the beginning. Bring us to the beginning of you falling in love with music and where it's taking you and where you want it to go.
So the first like falling in love with music was definitely from my mum's tape collection. She used to buy these blank cassettes and then basically just go and beg anything she could get her hands on. So she had this massive tape collection, all like meticulously labeled up, of like the most broad music. And like that physical process of like digging into cassettes and like going through like from classical to like grunge to rock to soul to blues to folk to pop, like so much variety of music was probably the first thing I remember about really digging. And I'm like, you know, 5, 6, 7 at the time. And I'm like digging through cassettes and finding new stuff to put on. There was hundreds of things. Zoom forward a little later, about 15, 16, I get heavily into vinyl culture. And really that's the beginning of the end. Immediately gravitated towards hip hop, R&B, soul, trip hop, and then immediately the roots of that music in terms of sample culture, and then like coming through jazz and funk, but ultimately, and a little bit of soul, but like ultimately just that love of jazz just like bang straight away kind of hit me when I really started to dig into the samples that were really resonating with me, and then got into sample culture and beat making and DJing. I started human beatboxing, and we did a lot of incredible shows through beatboxing, through that process of some really incredible players, and then artists from the world of hip hop, from Sugar Hill Gangs to a Gangstar, Guru. That was one of my favorite shows ever, that support. You know, all kinds of luminaries that would step through, and we'd always kind of be the go-to hosts and performers to kind of warm up the show with our beatboxing. And all the while I was getting into production and beat making. Then after a couple of years, I really wanted to make original music. I was in love with sample culture and the kind of aesthetic of it, but I really wanted to just make the music myself, informed by the kind of sound of sampling and the process of it, but like self-sampling and creating and making your own drums and keyboards and basses and guitars, and not kind of relying on just flipping a loop. It's something I never really liked. Even when I was sampling, I always wanted to take a little bit of this record, a little bit of that record, a little bit of that, a kick from here, a snare from there. And I was never into loops. I love sample culture, but I was never into loops. So really it was just an extension of that. I got beat making, and then I kind of became hip to making records when I got asked to join a jazz band as a beatboxer and an MC. So we're doing a lot of rapping there, but really that was college for me. That was street college, was just being in a jazz band, a large jazz band. It was like 12 piece at one point. And wanting to, this love of like jazzy hip hop, and then being in an actual jazz band that's going all the way from playing like groove to like traditional jazz, and like just playing straight trad. It was like an education process for me. And then figuring out how to record it, that was the starting point. So it was really trial by fire. Really heavy players, really heavy cats, playing like really heavy music, really well. And then having to go from like sampling and making beats in your room on like, I started on tape machines as well. So like 4 tracks. So we'd be putting beats down to 4 track, and you'd have to just like nail it, you know. But jumping from that point to beat machines, drum machines, and then straight into let's figure out how to record a 12-piece band. And ever since then, just had this love of live music and a very particular aesthetic I'm always chasing, bro.
That's amazing, bro. That's amazing, man. So it's definitely been jazz and hip hop has been the forefront of your love for this music. And have you always been in London, or where are you originally from? Like, how did you end up in London?
So I came to London a couple of years ago to set up a recording studio, and really for the first time go full time in music. From a very young age, I think we're all infected by the kind of like attraction in music in one way or another. For the people who are like in it and doing their thing, it's like something that's an impulse you have to do, something you're drawn to. And that had always been the case, and I'd always done music, but I moved to London to basically go full time for the first time a couple of years ago. Prior to that, I was born in Scotland, and came up there and then moved around a lot in England, so I lost the accent, unfortunately. But yeah, spent a lot of time in Scotland as well, like later on in life, and then moved down from Scotland to London to open a studio, to get involved in being a producer and an engineer in this culture and climate. There's like nothing else in Britain. There's a lot of amazing places for music all around the country, as there is anywhere, as there is in America. There's all kinds of different loves of music and scenes that kind of originate from different spots. At the same time, there's enough of a scale in London to kind of create an ecosystem.
Nice. You've enjoyed London so far. You think London is a good fit for you?
I do, bro. Yeah, the only way is up from here. I mean, I can't degrade now. I can't step back. It's a really amazing climate and culture, and it constantly keeps you on your toes as well. You got to be alert. You got to be ready. It gives you that kind of London vibe, in the same way you talk about a kind of New York spirit. You know, like there's a certain thing you got to be on if you're excelling in that kind of environment, and you got a passion for it. It takes a certain energy, and I've become quite addicted to it, man. So I'm loving my time out here, and it's led to lots of amazing things, man.
Man, I'm telling you, it definitely has. And that goes into the part of how we know each other. I tell people this story all the time, and it blows my mind, and it blows their mind when I tell them, man. kind of give your side of the story. Like we've literally have been working together now for about 3 or 4 years, but we still at this point have not physically met in person. And yet you are definitely one of my strongest right-hand men in my career. Tell them a little bit of our story on how our bridges got connected. It's pretty interesting.
It is pretty interesting, bro. And like, just to zoom forward there at the same time, like, yeah, I could totally share that. Like, one of the most like key pillars in my music career. And like, knowing some stuff retrospectively from the perspective of how we actually met as well. We on very separate paths in one respect. We're going about being a beat maker and a producer, getting my first records come out, getting that first love happening in different sectors and different regions, enough to kind of start really putting myself out there a couple of years before going full time. And kind of launched myself onto an app. And in parallel at the same time, I think a long-standing brother of yours recommended this app to you because he'd happened to move out to London as well.
Shouts out to Johnny Voltic. Shouts out to the Voltic.
Shouts out. And this is the thing, you, I believe we're told you need to jump on this app. There's stuff happening. And I think the next chapter might be there for you, you know, because you'll set these guys on fire. You'll come in with the crazy stuff. Obviously, not knowing that at the time, though, I'm like on the other end going, wonder what I can find on here. Now, I have a love of sampled music, rap, hip hop, but over the past few years, like, I've had this total love of like R&B, neo soul, the blends of jazz and hip hop, like that kind of post hip hop movement that's not trap, that post hip hop movement that's like post Robert Glasper.
Yeah,
you know, like that kind of way of going with that line of playing and musicianship inherently kind of intrinsic to the hip hop sound. So it's like jazz, but it's informed by hip hop, and it wouldn't exist without both in like equal parts. But it's an incredible kind of pursuit. So I was hoping to find vocalists, and I've wanted to work with vocalists for a long time over rappers. It takes a very rare and distinctive voice for me to kind of jump on rap these days. You've basically got to be the one, or it doesn't excite me, it doesn't energize me. So I'm kind of looking around, expecting to find some UK-based vocalists. The app was put together by the family and the extension of a UK rap group called Foreign Beggars.
Yeah.
And the app is Brapp, which is unfortunately now kind of closed down. So it's kind of on lockdown. It's still there if you want to search for it and have a look what's about. But basically the premise was producers and beat makers put up a beat, and on iPhone only, which was maybe part of its kind of like limitation of its roadmap. MCs or vocalists could kind of latch onto one of those beats and do a performance to camera, and lock it in and repost it on Brapp. So hence then this kind of network appeared on there of a load of British beat makers and a load of British rappers, and some British vocalists. And then it started to diversify a little bit, and you'd have people playing instruments and stuff. And it started to kind of break into maybe other territories that already as well have a love of UK hip hop, like Australia. Massive proponents of a British rap sound in Oz. Like, they love it, man. They go nuts for it, as much as we go nuts for an Australian accent as well, but particularly like they love it. So as an extension of like Foreign Beggars and their whole brand and everything else, I think they caught onto it, and that scene caught onto it. And then some really high caliber vocalists came onto it. I was on it for a short period, and I stumbled across this video by a man named JTronius. And they were short form, weren't they? Like short form. So they were always like short videos and stuff. And I maybe got like 25 to 30 seconds in on one video of yours. And I was like, I need to speak to this guy. Like, I just need to speak to this guy straight away. And like, after dropping you a message on Instagram, I went back and watched the rest of the video. But I basically got like 3/4 of the way through this one shot, scrolled back up to the top, found your social media or like searched it on Google, Googled it, and I came up with your Insta and then just dropped you a message like, bro.
Bro. And dog, and that's so crazy, man, because here we are today, like I said, 3-4 years later, here we are, and you are definitely one of my main music business partners. You had, like you say, you have become a pillar in my career and my journey as a musician, man. And we've made some amazing records since. Everything has been online, and you wouldn't be able to tell when you press play, man. We really came together, man, and really figured out and put our sounds together. And I look forward to giving it to the rest of the world. One thing I realized listening to you talk, and you kind of spoke on it either way, is like, as a producer, one thing I've noticed about you too is that you are naturally an A&R rep. Like you, if we talk in label terms, you are consistently searching for talent, and you got a pretty good knack, man. I've seen some of the other artists that you've intertwined with and started working with over these past few years, and you've really got a niche for finding unique individuals that hold their ground in their own lane with your flavor mixed in with all of us, man. It's been pretty cool. Have you always been like that, or was that just recently you started getting like that?
No, I've always been stubbornly specific, man. I'm like that cat, like, I'll wait. I'll wait. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you. Yeah, you. Yeah, cool. And then other than that, I'm like, I'll wait. I'll go and work on my craft. I'll go and like pick up a bass and figure out how to do that. I'll go and like practice my guitar a little bit more and break out the keys, or figure out how to do my drumming a little better, or buy a new bit of percussion. Oh, wait, there's a vocalist I want to work with.
So yeah, you just don't jump on anything. It's got to grab you. It's got to put you in the headlock.
Yeah, you know what? And I think in many ways, like that has like had an effect on the kind of like amount of records I've made. Sure, and that's something like we are stepping up and becoming more prolific with, as we're kind of gaining attraction and working with people in completely different circles, some really established cats who are just ready to go. But in terms of going through that process of coming up, it was just from go. It was always that case of like, nah, I have this particular thing I can hear, and I'm going to wait for that. And if I can't get that, I'm not interested. And it was kind of like this very narrow field of view in a way, and I'm hip to so many different sonics, but at the same time, when it comes to like the actual like crafting of a record, I've always basically heard one vibe, and I've never wavered on that, bro. Since like vinyl culture, it was like, don't quite like that, I like that.
Yeah,
that's what I want to make. And over the course of what is now a 20-year journey, from that point of going, that's what I want to make, that's still the music I make today. It's still that same vibe. I've never really wavered on that, bro. It's got to have a certain pocket.
So it's fair enough to say that you know what you like, you know what you won't fuck with, and you're going to stick to your guns and stick to the script.
Yeah, and you know what? Like a couple of times throughout that period, I have kind of questioned that and going, oh, maybe I should. Should I? But really, ultimately, at this point, no, there ain't no going back. This is the vibe, and like the whole extension of like making that original groove-informed, jazzy, funky, dissonant, happy, sad kind of music, like doing all kinds of things and really like playing with that as much as possible. But there's always a pocket. It's always got to have a certain balance, and that's been the same since Dot. And I actually don't quite know where I came from, but to backtrack to one of our earlier conversations here, what I realized after a while when I got into vinyl and DJ culture, BPMs and tempos became really prevalent, polyrhythms and everything else, which is what I started to play with within beatbox and within jazz a lot more. But tracking back, when I got to like DJ culture, I started to kind of categorize music from a DJ's perspective. I did this kind of study about the music I inherited. And the music I inherited was essentially whatever my mom listened to or whatever my dad listened to. And their tastes are like vastly different. But when cataloging the music that I had gravitated to in their collections, all of it exists in the same tempo range. So whether it was like Nirvana on my mum's side, or Debussy on my mum's side, or whether it was like classic rock on my dad's side, or like pop rock, like, you know, Genesis or something, like later Genesis, not early Genesis. Came hip to later on. I was blown away. There's that amazing Outkast sample as well. So they have their moment, but they went through this different thing. But even going through such a large breadth of music, I realized it all actually existed within a certain tempo range. So it's still the tempo range I work in today as well. And I love to contrast that at different times, but apparently I've always been on a very similar quest to kind of specifically make a certain pocket of music.
And we'll segue into you saying quest. Where did you get your name from? How did you come up with the name Maverick Quest?
So vinyl and DJ culture really got me into graffiti. It was kind of like an instantaneous response of looking at all these scratch records and breaks records and just being like, what is this? Like, this is dope. And it was full elemental. It was like DJing, breaking, beatboxing, rapping, like the whole thing. I just got absorbed and caught by kind of all of it, bro. So the graffiti vibes were strong at the same time, and I really got into graffiti culture and everything that goes with that. And that's really how those names originated. Simple as I started.
Did somebody name you? Did you come up with this, or did somebody give you that name?
So it's twofold. The quest part I was given, but I actually had a different graffiti name, and then I actually run into a situation with the law, so I had to change that name. This was quite interesting in UK law. I'm not quite sure how this bit happens in the States, but I was just on the point where I was still a minor or still a juvenile, you know, so I didn't actually really, I got away with it, basically, ultimately. So I got caught, and that was quite an interesting little chapter, but basically it had no effect on anything. I just had to like not write, not paint under the same name. During that time, I was starting to do a lot more gigs as a DJ, and as a beatboxer, as a host, like 16, 17, 18, and started running my own events like really early. And yeah, someone just gave me that name Quest. Many years later, I ran a design agency, which was called Maverick & Co., which is actually named after a Texas connection, Samuel Maverick, which is where the term Maverick comes from. It was a divergence here real quick, but basically the reason I loved it from a branding point of view, it was a Texas landowner, also a signer of the Declaration of Independence, who wasn't a rancher, but would obviously like acquire so much land that it would come with cattle. But because he wasn't a rancher, he refused to brand his cattle.
Yeah.
So around Texas, when you saw an unbranded animal, you were like, that's a Maverick.
Bro, you were blowing my mind. You were telling me something about my home state that I did not know. You were, how you telling me about where I'm from? How does that? But you're always like that, man. You know, you've always been like that. You always got these details, man. I'm not surprised, man. So an unbranded cattle is a Maverick.
And that's where the term comes from. And that's why, like, you know, Goose and Maverick, because he was the wild card. He was the unbranded cattle. He was the one that wouldn't be like branded, pigeonholed. And that's the whole point, man. And that's where that etymology comes from. So it really interested me as someone that was doing logo design and branding, as an extension really from like graffiti and making pieces and coming up with words and like the crafting of letters and typography. It just led me down that path intrinsically, and that attention to detail. So the idea of having a story based around the idea of branding and non-branding was really interesting. So that was that Texas Connect way back. And at some point then, really, it came out of Googling the new world, bro, because I realized that if anyone's going to find me with a name Quest, it's a really hard thing to search, bro. It needed another little spin on it. And after a while, I kind of moved through a different cycle of jobs, and the freelance, basically, but agency I'd been running got shelved, and I had this identity as Maverick and I had this identity as Quest. And very simply, just combined the two things, made it unique, put it together. So two worlds kind of colliding, but it's probably just very descriptive as well. As we've been talking about with vocalists, like, I'm going to wait. That's the one I'm looking for. That's the rogue. That's the renegade in the system.
And you know, these times that we've been working together, that's literally the first time I've heard that story. So that's really cool, man. That's really cool. I guess I don't know why I never asked that in full, but I think that's the first time I've really heard you put that together. And that's interesting, man, because, you know, I'm all about full circles, man. And you just put another one. Our whole thing has been real big on universal alignment and things just kind of coming together that we know that it's beyond us, man. And that was just another confirmation out there, man. I'm glad you put it out there. Now, I'm going to ask you what I'm asking everybody in these interviews. When it's all said and done, what do you want to leave this earth with? What is the Maverick Quest legacy?
Yeah, I mean, legacy is the term. It's about leaving a vibe and something that extends far beyond your time on the mortal plane. I've, for the most part of my life, been more a person of logic and science. And if it's real in terms of categorization, it's because I can see it, smell it, touch it, feel it. And over the past few years, and like working with really insightful artists with amazing energy, such as yourself and many others as well, it's led me more to an awareness and a kind of spiritual understanding far and away from, you know, where I've spent the majority of kind of life in that respect. And that's got me really hip to just approaching things in a whole different way.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's kind of deep like that. And it opens stuff up, man, where you kind of just think about that approach in a different element, for sure.
Dude, man, and dog, and I can definitely tell that work ethic and your passion for details, you definitely, in my world, you've already set precedent and inspired me and made me see things different on my journey. But I could tell anybody that comes into contact with you actually gets to work with you is going to see that, man. So I think you are in the middle of your legacy, and I look forward to seeing it evolve, having our stuff, our music evolve, and just your quest as a producer and engineer and just a lover of life evolve with time, man. I definitely think your mark is being put on this world, and it's going to shake this world, man. So you continue to do what you do, man. And with that being said, how do people get in touch with you, like, as far as like social media and stuff? How do people come into the world of Maverick Quest?
So my main outlet is kind of Instagram. And this is the other thing, like Maverick Quest is quite searchable now. And there's a few records out and about there, but we're picking it up all the time. And I've been very much in the background and operating in the shadows for a minute, working through the vehicle of other artists. But more of that is picking up, more spotlights coming on than ever before. And this was the amazing thing about meeting you the way I did, and going through that process of making records. I think we made one, and then we were in a position where we're like, let's do that again. And I think we made like 3, like basically in quick succession, because we were like, that works. Zooming forward very quickly to kind of like add this bit to the narrative and bring us up to the present day with the idea of where you can engage with what it is I'm doing. Because what it is I'm doing is very much connected to your journey now as well. After that process of kind of making those initial tracks and that initial like unshakable element of like, I have to work with this guy, we have to make something. I believe at the time I made a very grand statement in terms of our introduction about really making some really standout music. And I just knew it was going to click. We got to about 4 or 5 tracks, and we put this out to A&Rs, and in America, in the UK especially, and basically got the project signed for an album.
You did that, Daddy. You did that. I give you props. Or it did it itself. We could say that. It kind of, in a weird way, it kind of just fell in line like everything else, man. Crazy.
It fell in line, bro. So it's a really good time and opportunity to kind of like through this vehicle kind of bring that into the public realm. And we were at the tail end of last year, 2019, signed by a magical record label out here in the UK called BBE Records. And for me, for us, this label has put out Jay Dilla, Pete Rock, Roy Ayers, Charles Mingus, many different strands of the musical web that predated us and the ones that we love so much from such a like diverse but such a very similar kind of backdrop of all that kind of thread of music has gone through this record label, or is now catalog on this record label because of what it represents. So to kind of be on a label that inspired us in part or quite holistically, in my case, I have to say, because of beat culture, to even make music in the first place is just an incredible premise, an incredible notion. And we're just stepping up now to release in our group that you named Sons of the Sun.
Sons of the Sun for everyone.
For everyone,
for
which
everyone.
Is a true collaboration of music and vocals and lyrics and poetry and expression and the conversation that's been happening remotely. As you said at the beginning, we've never actually physically met. And now we've got an album coming out on an incredible record label this year.
Fucking craziness. Fucking craziness.
Crazy, bro. It's crazy. And so that's really where you'll be able to engage with what I'm doing next. Because what I'm doing next is the project Sons of the Sun with my man JTronius out there in Texas, laying down some beautiful energy on top of some energy basically from all over the world, London to Scotland to Manchester to Estonia to Philadelphia to Washington to Texas to Boston. There's people coming at this from all over the place. New York,
Seattle.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy, bro.
Yeah.
A lot of players from different places, different spaces, really all gravitating to the same energy. And then having a record label behind it out here in London, but with so much kind of transatlantic connect anyway.
Yeah.
It's a really serious situation. So shout out to Peter Adakwa over at BBE and everyone at the BBE family, because so much of that music just blew my mind. And the list goes on and on. I mentioned a couple of the artists that are kind of maybe more prominent for a lot of people they're going to kind of catch up with. But in terms of like international, but also UK beat culture, there's just some legends on that record label.
Man.
And it's amazing to be part of history.
Craziness, man. And it's still so surreal to me because this particular adventure is all been online still. So it's still like, as much as I know it's real, it still feels quite dreamy. It still has that element. But I think, you know, what's amazing about this is that we put our minds together and we just made it about the music and the music for itself. And it's gone so far to the point where, you know, I literally had a dream a couple nights ago that we finally met. Like, I actually had the dream of us meeting. It was pretty interesting, man. And I look forward to growing with you, man. And I look forward to watching you as not just as a partner, but as just a musician, period. And as a fan of you now, I look forward to seeing where your journey goes, where ours goes apparently, and where yours as an individual goes too, man, because you are by far an amazing, unique individual, man. And I appreciate you coming here on the show. Are there any last thoughts that you have before we dip out here? Any last thoughts? And remind them again what your social media links are.
Okay, so you can get me Maverick Quest at Quest17 on Instagram, Maverick Quest on all other channels. That's what's up. Yeah, I just like to say it's been a pleasure to be on Gabbin with the Guvna. And shout out to all the guests you've had so far and all the guests you'll have in the future, bro. All the successes that all of those people and yourself will have with what's to come in our journey in music, bro. And it's just an absolute pleasure to be a part of that narrative, bro. So big love from London to the whole family, to the whole network, and to those we're yet to play with, tour with, record with, and really get into it, man, because it's an exciting time and it's only up from here. 2020 is a bit crazy right now with everything that's going on in the world, but at the same time it's a little bit crazy right now because there's stuff going on in the world, and we're just about to release some amazing music. We've been pouring our hearts and souls into, man. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. Yeah, and it's like a creative renaissance going on, bro, at the same time. So,
you know, it's like I tell everybody right now, the important part of when your back is up against the wall, and this is literally a world, we're all in this together, literally around the world. It's important that you tap into your inner alchemist and know how to turn some bullshit into some cool shit. And let's stay creative, and let's hurry, you know, let's keep our minds right, and let's man, get the hell about this pandemic, and let's keep it pushing. I call it the pandemic. The pandemic. And we're gonna get out of it, man. But once again, family, thank you. You know you're near and dear to me now, man. And once again, everybody, this is JTronius. You've been on here with Gabbin with the Guvna, with my partner Maverick Quest out in London town. Y'all stay blessed. Let go of all that stress, man. Hey, man, thank you very much for being on the show, brother.
Brother, take care, man. Speak soon. Love.